evening, the last day in the month of March, 31st of March 2026. My name is Favour.
And my name is Ifoma Wonderful.
Now, the ongoing conversation is still around what happened in Plateau, in Jos, Plateau, on Sunday evening, Sunday night, Palm Sunday. More than 40 persons were killed and several others injured following an attack by gunmen in Angwa Rukuba community in Jos. We understand it occurred at about 7:50, between 7:50 to 8 p.m. on Sunday night. That's 29th of March 2026. And you would understand that it has plunged the community into chaos, and we even saw that leading to a protest the next day, and the governor had to go there to address the community in an armored vehicle. Eyewitnesses in the area have continued to speak up about their experiences and what they saw, and it has been absolutely heartbreaking. I mean, people recounting their experiences on that particular day. I mean, the presidents of that community said something along the lines of the military intervention, but the twist at the time during what he said was that the military came, but they came not to protect them. So it's been quite a lot going on, and more than 24 hours later, President Tinubu eventually put out a press statement through Bayo Onanuga, where he condemned the killing in Plateau State, in Jos, Plateau State on Sunday. Now, Mr. President said the killings and abduction of wedding guests in Kaduna was an affront to all that Nigeria stands for, and he has directed security agencies to intensify efforts to pursue the perpetrators and those spreading misinformation that can inflame tensions and further endanger lives. So are we, as much as the perpetrators are being pursued, those spreading misinformation can or should they should also be arrested, because they are inflaming tensions and they are further endangering lives. And he reaffirmed that security agencies are actively addressing the situation and stressed that public cooperation is vital to maintaining peace and protecting lives and property. So he said there is need for communities to comply with evacuation, relocation, and related advice and processes. In his exact words, he says, "I urge our security agencies to be more proactive in preventing these attacks by acting on early warning intelligence. All the remaining abductees from Kahiri village must be rescued immediately." And he says, "I commend Governor Caleb Mutfwang of Plateau State for his efforts in containing the situation in Jos, and Governor Uba Sani of Kaduna State for supporting the rescue and containment efforts." So, and he says, "I assure the people and government of the two states of my support. I commiserate with the families of those killed and pray for the quick recovery of the injured. Our government is currently acquiring more sophisticated equipment to enable our security agencies to track and smash criminals in real time wherever they are." In the meantime, Governor Caleb Mutfwang says the state won't bow to fear despite the attack. So this is where we are with the case. Well, it has also captured international attention as Raila Moore, who has been quite vocal in recent time in regards to the Christian genocide going on in Nigeria, has put out a tweet regarding what happened in Plateau State on Sunday night. But would like to bring this conversation back on the table. This is, insecurity has persisted for almost 2 decades or more, and it was part of the campaign promises of this administration to ensure that insecurity is addressed. A matter of fact, under previous administrations, especially the Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, it was actually on that premise that they campaigned vigorously when APC was campaigning. That was when Boko Haram started running rampage, and APC had to capitalize on that to come into power in 2015 when President Muhammad Buhari came into power. But this is 10 years, more than 10 years of APC in power. How can we say they have really been able to address the issue of insecurity? What exactly is going on? Is it beyond what we see on the headlines? What exactly do we think is going on behind the scene? Are there chances? Is there a possibility of the government actually sincerely fighting insecurity uh, 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 to 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 the end? So these are some of the reservations or questions that people have. Our guest is Mr. Emeka Odom, a public affairs analyst and also a communications expert. He joins us this evening on this very conversation. Mr. Odom, good evening to you. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you so much, and once again, I'm very delighted to be on the program. Good evening to our listeners out there.
How you doing?
Fine, thank you.
The mood in the country is absolutely nothing to write home about. Sunday night I was busy with the PDP convention, and that was when I started seeing the tweets about what was going on in Aguara Ukuba and all of that. But taking a look at what we have seen and the fact that more than 24 hours later, the president had to put out a statement. A lot of people say, oh, it could be that he had to assess the situation. He needed to get security reports before putting out the statement. Do you think that that's what the case is? And what exactly do you think is going on, especially in the northern part of the country? And why do you think, you know, um, several administrations, the ones that have come and gone, have not really been able to address the insecurity we have in Nigeria, more especially in the northern part?
All right, thank you so much. I want to begin, by I want to begin with the first question you asked. Why is it that it's almost 24 hours before the more than 24 hours before the statement from the presidency?
Right.
Yes. On the surface, the president is that's a very big office, and with a lot of responsibilities. So naturally, the president will want to be properly briefed by the relevant, personnel and agencies that are in charge. Um, Also, I'm sure he will probably want to also hear from the governor of the state, so that by the time he speaks with authority, with clarity, and you know, you,
Some level of understanding.
some level of understanding to the extent that he can convey authority and decision. And also confidence, because when the president says, if something has happened and the president has spoken to say this is what we are going to do, I mean, to a reasonable extent, that should bring some level of relief and assurance that look, the president has spoken, and the same way with governor if it's a state matter, So I believe that these are probably some of the things that informed his perceived late response.
Okay.
However, the flip side of it is that you see, the office of the president is very large and booming as well. Even if it's the remotest part of this country, if anything happens there, I can assure you that within a very short time, if it's something of significance, the president will get to know about it, because there's always a state presence in all the nooks and crannies of the country.
Right.
And so there's a channel, because if it's in the village, there's always a police presence in such place. From probably the police station, if it's something of significance, it goes to the divisional police office. From there to the local government area, and of course we have the DSS there as well. And from there they move to the state, and from the state it goes to the federal. I mean, that's even assuming where the social media is not available. But we live in an age where there's social media. So as it's happening there, it might even interest you to know that as it's happening here, those at the top will have a firm grip of and a firm understanding of what is going on.
Yeah.
So that is why some pundits may say there's really no reason why the president shouldn't have
Giving out a statement.
yes, earlier than now,
Mm.
because we all understand the difficulties that people are passing through in this country now, particularly in the area of security.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about security, for goodness sake, yes, security is a very, is whatever threatens the peace and safety of people, can be classified as insecurity. Experts will tell you.
Mm.
However, even within that insecurity itself, if you declassify it, you now know that they are in segments. And like in your opening speech, you made reference to, yes, the insecurity situation has been in this country now for an upward of 20 years. That's very clearly, nobody will argue that.
Mm-hmm.
But they have varied over time. When President Goodluck Jonathan, for instance, in fact, let me say, when President Obasanjo came into power in 1999, perhaps the very first kind of insecurity that confronted was some kind of banditry. I remember then that some military task force were set up in some states. I say so because at that point in time I was a youth corper in faraway Katsina, and I know that that was Operation Zaman Lafia, because I served with the military at that time. So
Mm-hmm.
there was Operation Zaman Lafia, that was domiciled in that. But so they were, because Katsina was one of the northwestern states, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now, within a short time, that kind of banditry, was a bit. I remember one of my friends was, I think he was returning from the north at that time. They were harassed somewhere around somewhere between Niger and Kaduna states.
Mm.
But that banditry, that kind of insecurity, within a very short time, it died down, right? Now, move very fast to when President President Yaradua came into power.
Mm.
The issues that came up, down to when President Goodluck Jonathan was there, we saw the rise of, Boko Haram. And so Boko Haram came with a different kind of tactics. The detonation of, explosives,
Right.
Improvised explosive devices,
Kidnapping of school children.
kidnapping of mass school children,
Mm.
and sometimes, even at the mega cities, so it became an issue. That is also a kind of insecurity that was slightly different from the one President Obasanjo had to do with. Now, when President Muhammadu Buhari came, of course, APC capitalized on that, case at that time, and they promised Nigerians that they were going to deal with the situation. And many people keyed into it because President Muhammadu Buhari himself was a general, a retired general in the army, who Nigerians knew his record that, at a point in time, he dealt with the Mantasen group in the northeast. I think that was when he was either when he was a GOC or when he was the military governor of Borno State at that time. The old Borno at that time. So many Nigerians believed that. Eventually, he was voted into power. And well, those who so much believe in President Muhammadu Buhari will tell you that he dealt with the case. They will tell you the likes of Lai Mohammed will tell you that Boko Haram was decimated. I think that was the language we were frequently told that time, that they had been decimated
or
neutralized. Now, coming to this very regime, you somehow yes, the Boko Haram may still be there. We still see flashes of Boko Haram, but another kind of insecurity, though related. Now, the rise of this, you don't even know whether you call them terrorists or bandits or whatever, or they are the same. Where they move to a village, attack village, kill people, and seem to disappear again. So it has been misery all over.
Now, there's something I would like to bring to your notice. Two questions. Do you think things are blown out of proportion when it comes to social media? Because I had to ask you that question when you said, "Oh, that sometimes with the advent of social media, the presidency can even get information before they get briefings because there is state presence in every nook and cranny of this country." That's one. Secondly, a lot of people will agree with me that insecurity started to spiral out of control under Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, right? And that was because a lot of people would argue that that was because there was the opposition at the time was strong. Some would even point in the direction of the former president Muhammad Buhari when he made certain statements. They would, cite some of the statements that he made when Goodluck Ebele Jonathan got into power and all that. And we have also heard people make insinuations that the opposition at the time had everything to do with the insecurity and the whole Boko Haram and how intense it became simply because they wanted to destabilize the government of Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. Now you get into, and it was on that premise, like I said, but they campaigned and won elections in 2015. When they came into power, it persisted. And the analysis at the time is that, oh, maybe they are not able to control them anymore. One would have thought that at a time like this, that there's a level of synergy. I mean, we have 31 governors. We don't have that much of opposition under this dispensation. I don't know if you understand what I mean. We don't have that much opposition that you can say. I mean, the opposition, they're be like they have been kept busy with their various political parties trying to even ensure that they run for elections and all that. So it is not what we used to have under the Goodluck Ebele Jonathan era and all of that. How would you describe that, or what would be your response to that? Given the shades or the different shades of insecurity that we have had to experience and what people had attributed to be the causes of this insecurity at those different times.
Yes, it is very correct that the government of the day, as we speak today, enjoys some measure of cohesiveness, in terms of and probably less less political opposition, the effectiveness of political opposition compared to when they themselves were in the opposition.
Right.
That is very clear. But before we come to that, it's also important for us to emphasize, yes, when President Goodluck Jonathan was there were all kinds of insinuations that well, the opposition had doing this. But see, all of those things were just mere conjecture. Nobody has ever come up to say decide. I mean,
Based
to
on
be very
investigations
yes,
or
based
anything.
on credible evidence,
Yes.
and credible evidence and good reports to say yes, the opposition did ABC, to worsen the see, people must understand that we run what we are running is political government, and in a political system, the opposition will always cash in on, just like in football. When you are playing a football game, right, your opponents will try to look at your loophole, utilize it and score you a goal. That's just, even if they can even come and create confusion in your defense. It is allowed as long as it's within the ambit of what the rules of the game allow. So for me, that argument that the government of Goodluck Jonathan could not handle this. Yes, we are very right to say that things began to probably nosedive during the reign of Goodluck Jonathan, security wise. If you make that assertion, you may not be far away from the truth. But one thing is very clear, that however may be the case, no matter the position that the opposition may have assumed at that point in time, the responsibility still was that of the government at the time, to deal with the issue of security. In the same way we are now calling on the current government to deal with the issue of security, the same way that the government at that time, ought to have dealt with the issue of security, because the powers of the president has never reduced and it has never been added. The powers are there. So Goodluck Jonathan did not enjoy more power than the current government, right? So if there were things that he could have done that he didn't do, for me that was a big minus, and that's what we say. But you see, in all of these things, for me as an individual, as one who has been following events, I will ascribe all of these things to failure of governance and over politicization of issues. I unfortunately we run a system where we seem to politicize practically everything. Everything. Both the ones that need politics and the one that need pure nationalistic standpoint. We seem to politicize everything. You know, yes, in all of these things, I remember when Goodluck Jonathan was in power. You know, the opposition may have whipped up the sentiment at that point in time. It's normal, right? When, for instance, the president wants to use his powers conferred on him, I mean, donated to him by the Constitution to deal with a certain case, the opposition may criticize him, either being too high-handed, right, or being too soft. Now, if the president is not sure of the advice that he has gotten and the reaction of the people, he may fidget, he may backstrap. And if he does that and the situation gets worse, he receives the blame. Because we do expect a president, before you say this is what I want to do, you should receive enough intelligence, enough advice. And that is why nobody will criticize the president for having 20 advisors. Nobody will. The same way let me give you an example in Port Harcourt and in River State not long ago. The president felt that, look, the situation in River State at that point in time, that what he needed to do to instill order and to make sure that things don't get out of hand was to impose a state of emergency. He received knocks from the opposition, from everybody. Many people criticized him. But that was his own way of making sure that things don't drop off the table. If he had listened to opposition,
even if it is not in line with the Constitution,
you can't say so because the court said the Supreme Court said his actions are in line. So that put paid to that argument. That put paid to that argument. We needed the court to speak, right? But look at where I'm going is that the president decided that this is the way to go. If the president had listened to opposition or to say, I don't know what people will say, let me not do things that I will be heavily criticized, like many people will tell you was the nature and character of the Goodluck administration. There are people who believe in that oh, the man didn't know, there was so much concern, he didn't want to be blamed, so you know that kind of, he was not that decisive and things like that. Whether that is true or false, that a lot of things appear so. So if the president has said, I don't want people to criticize me, I don't want people to say I'm high-handed, and he kept quiet and the situation spills out of hand, it's still him that will receive the knocks. So that is why, as a president, the powers are there for you. Use it to ensure that things move right. Now, if you overuse it and things get, of course, you still get the knocks. Look at the American president, for instance. If you look at what is happening in the Middle East now, you know what is happening in the Middle East. A lot of people in America don't agree with him. A lot of other presidents in the world don't agree with him. Going to enter into hostilities in Iran. But he has repeatedly said that it is my responsibility to protect America and to fight for their strategic national interest. When you say strategic, it simply means that over time, you may not be seeing it now, but he feels that if we don't act now, we may pay a heavy price in the future. So if you look, if you now relate it to what is happening, that is then when perhaps I may want to agree with you that when Boko started, right, if some actions had been taken at that time, at the early stage, we probably wouldn't be where we are today. That is number one. Number two, we recall again in the former president of blessed memory, President Muhammad Buhari, when the issue of banditry, this same thing we are dealing with now, also started. Some people were saying, oh, declare this terrorist organization. There was a dilly-dally on that issue. So perhaps if politics had not gone ahead.
So you think that situation was over pampered?
All right.
These are possibilities.
You talked about politicization of issues around security, because I was listening to an Air Commodore, and he said that there is this fusion of politics in the military. And perhaps this is why we are where we are today. Uh, he made some statements about the president putting in his friends and proteges in governments. Then, when we take a look at what we saw at the APC convention, we saw the Minister of Defense. He was there inspecting the stadium that will be used for the convention instead of, sticking to what his job is. And if you also listen to what some of the residents of that area said, if you listen to their narration about the incident, they said something that caught my attention. They said that they wanted to go after the terrorists, but they were stopped by the military. They were stopped by the military at that point, from going after those terrorists. Do you think that there is complicity of the military? Do you think that this is why we are politics in the military?
You see, the issue of Plateau State and insecurity in Plateau State, it is deep. It has a long history. And there are too many things that are not public domain. I had the privilege of, stumbling into a report. I think it was the crisis in Plateau State in the early 2000s, right? And after that crisis, there was a pro panel headed by Justice Nikki Toby. Justice Nikki Toby was the chairman of the confab, the Constitutional Conference Obasanjo set up, I think it was in 2005 or thereabouts. So I read the reports and I was awed. And that is why every now and then, each time there's crisis in Jos, you will hear these kind of stories. In fact, the stories are replete with very disgusting, narratives. Some people say, oh, we called the commander. Oh, the commander answered us and told us that they are coming now. So after 10 minutes, we didn't see anybody who called him. The phones were off. We have heard stories of that. We have even heard situations where the commander himself came out to deny all of those things, say it never happened. Right? So that is why I'm telling you that the history of crisis in Rivers, in Plateau State is deep, is long, is historical. But in all of these things, for me, what I think is it can be dealt with, and very decisively too, if you can detach politics from all of these things. Now, the question is this: how come it is only mainly during civilian administrations that all of these issues come up? Sometimes during the period that the military government was in place, a lot of these things were not as pronounced as they are today. So what is it that the military were doing when they were in power to suppress these things? Because after all, even now that we are in civilian regime, it's still the same military that are, dealing with them. It's still the same military that the Nigerian government is still using to quell those things. So it's not as if it is now vigilante people that are fighting them, or it is now neighborhood security that is fighting them. It's still the same military. The laws have not changed. But when the military is in power, when they are in control of the political structures, and when they are in political authority, what is it that they are doing that enables a lot of these disturbances to die down to a reasonable extent? Can't the civilians borrow a leaf? Because you see, the military themselves are Nigerians. They are also Nigerian citizens. So if there were one or two things they were doing when they were in power that enabled a peaceful coexistence, then why can't our civilian government borrow some of those things, as long as they don't inhibit the fundamental rights of the people? Why can't they borrow them, apply them, so that there will be peaceful coexistence? That is the question.
You know, you said something. You said that the history of insecurity in Plateau State is very deep. And you know, given how volatile that area is, one would have thought that by now the security architecture should have been strengthened with, you know, CCTV cameras installed everywhere. I listened to, there was a time that the governor said something. He said that about more than 60 communities have been taken over by these terrorists. So they know where they are. They know that these terrorists had already taken over more than 60 communities. So is it that they are clueless, or is it lack of political will?
You know, I always say that, you see, it's very difficult to wake up a man who is pretending to be asleep. Now, the two states today that is in focus, Plateau State and Kaduna State, the two of them are host to some of the most strategic military institutions we have in the country. One division, one mechanization is in Kaduna. 3 mechanized division is in Jos. And these are not in Nigerian Palace. These are not small military units. These are where GOCs are domiciled. So what that, you know, presupposes is that, to a reasonable extent, there's an appreciable military presence in those two states. And of course, it's a common knowledge that Kaduna I doubt how many states in Nigeria that has the extent of military presence that Kaduna, both in structures and in person, everything. And that also, you know, can't say of Plateau State as well. But in spite of all of these things, we still, you know, get this kind of narratives coming from those states. So it tells you one thing, that it goes beyond what you and I are seeing. And that is why I said it is deep.